I'm going to do, we'll stray away from the Petajon and the Magic Tool clip and the compound loops and stuff.
Yeah.
We'll do, this is my Straggle string Czech Nymph. And so for a hook, I'm going to use the, it's a partridge Czech Nymph.
What size is that? 12?
This is a 12, but partridge, for some reason, they kind of revamped their sizing. So I have another package, and this is a size 4, and it says formerly size 10. So I don't know why such a dramatic size difference, but.
Is that going to be similar, or can you use like a Moonlight 51?
Yeah, you could use a 51. You could use a 51. The reason why I'm not using a 51 is because I like the bend, the less dramatic of a bend of the partridge hook versus the Moonlight.
51 over a clean camera.
For a clean camera, I'd use a 57 actually. And so for this is called the Straggle string Czech Nymph. So I'm using a Straggle string. And this is a leaf green. It's a brand new color, and or you could use the ryak, the green ryak, any kind of fluorescent or high green. And then you'll want to use a darker color green for the thorax area. And then for a hot spot, I'm going to add some of this pink, the fluorescent pink, for a hot spot. And then for the shell back, I'm going to use this Semperfli thin skin shell back. Okay, so what you want to do is lead the hook. So I'm going to start at the back and just make some touching turns. To about that point right there, and then I'm going to double back on itself and come back over itself. To about that point, and that'll be it. Now for the thread, I'm just going to use this same 12-aught nano silk in brown, and I'm just going to start that right there at the thread wraps, and then I'm going to use the tag end to kind of guide things and come over the lead to pretty far down in the bend.
You say that's the 12-aught panel that you're using?
This is 12-aught, yeah. 18's my favorite, but for doing some of the other techniques, the 12-aught's a little easier to do the split thread. Plus, the 12-aught thread is still, it's 50 denier, so it's still smaller than UTC 70 in diameter.
You get that 18 split all right?
Yeah, you can. It just the 12 is a little more manageable, a little easier to manage. So
I was using 18 or practically split.
Yeah.
That's my least favorite size.
That 18 on, is that more similar in size to like the spider thread that they do?
There you go.
18-aught is 30 denier. So anyway, I'm going to tie in the shell back. And stretch it as I'm bringing it down. Perfect. Thank you.
You're going to have to loan me some clear shell packs.
Okay.
You have your scissors so I can cut this.
Okay, now I'm going to tie in the ribbing material.
These are the lint cutters and wire.
You could use wire if you wanted to, but I like the clear.
See, gold handle, silver handle. Action person.
And then you want to tie in your straggle string. And really this is color preference, is personal preference. But I'm using this, it's a brand new color called leaf green. I'm not even sure if it's on the market yet. But it, the next best color would be like the ryak green or a fluorescent green. But what I'm going to do is pull off some of the fibers at the bottom to expose the core, so I can have a nice clean tie-in spot. There we go. I'm going to bring my thread right at the spot where I want to bring, which is about right here. And I'm bringing my thread to that spot, and I'm going to do a half hitch to keep my thread from jumping, because that's the point where I want to add in my hot spot. So now I'm just going to start wrapping the straggle string. And I'm going to do what's a technique that's called an anchor wrap. Now, anchor wrap's pretty important to do with these types of materials, because an anchor wrap seats the material down as tight as possible to the hook. And so you're not going to have any loose wraps, because sometimes when this stuff gets wet, it'll loosen up. And if it loosens up too much, you're going to get loops, and all it takes is one fish's tooth to get into one of those loops and destroy your fly. So I'm going to come in with 1 and 2 turns, and I'm going to kind of pull some of those fibers back as much as possible. That's my second turn, and I'm going to support the hook with my thumb and then give the material a little bit of a pull. Did you see it move? And then maintain tension, and then that's what's called an anchor wrap. And I'm going to continue to pull these fibers back as I'm turning, so that I'm getting each turn right next to each other. And every other turn, I'm going to do an anchor wrap. And that's just security to ensure that those wraps are as tight as possible against the hook, so that when that material gets wet, it's not going to come loose, or you're not going to have any loops or anything in it. I'm just going to continue up. I said every other turn, or every 2 or 3 turns, I'm going to do the anchor wrap.
Would you ever consider using any kind of adhesive instead? Or?
You could use an adhesive, but you would have to, if you're going to use an adhesive like super glue with doing this, you would have to be pretty quick at it, because the super glue will dry before you get to it. Yeah, and then yeah, if you've got super glue on here, you'll have to be careful when you're printing these fibers back, because you'll glue your fingers together with the material. Yeah. But it's kind of important to be doing these types of anchor wraps on these kinds of materials, Because like I said, it's security to ensure that these materials are as tight as they can possibly be on the hook. But you don't want to do what I just did, and that is pull tight enough to break the material. Back that off. Luckily it broke where I have enough to finish. Okay. Now I'm going to stand the hook up just a little bit. And then I'm going to tie in the hot spot for the hot spot. And once again, this is just straggle string, fluorescent pink. But you could use orange or any other of the fluorescent colors. But I only want a couple of turns because the idea is just a hot spot, just to get the attention. That's plenty. Okay, and now for the third color, a straggle string. Okay. Okay, so now, before I go much further, I'm just going to kind of clean up those butt ends a little bit, and then I'm going to put a 1/2 inch in it. And that's just to keep my thread from bumping off and losing the work I've done so far. Now what I'm going to do is, because these typically have tapered bodies, what I'm going to kind of do is come down on top with my fingers and push as many of those fibers, splitting them on either side of the hook. And yeah, like I'm prepping this for the shell back to come over, and then I'm going to kind of clip the top and a little bit of the sides. Up here in the thorax area, I'm not worried about doing that because I want those to be my legs. So now what I'm going to do is bring the shell back over, and I'm giving it a slight stretch. I'm not stretching it too far or too tight. But I'm putting a little bit of tension on that. And then a couple of turns to hold it, and then I'm pulling it back, and then a couple more turns. And then I'm going to put another half hitch or whip finish in there, because I don't want my thread to jump off the eye. And then I'm going to give this the shell back material, and you could use scud back too, and then give it a stretch and then a snip, and those butt ends seat right down. Now I'm going to try to position that shell back material directly on top of the hook, and then take the ribbing material and start ribbing the fly. And I'm gonna space this out, and I'm kind of holding that material so that the shell back materials, because I don't want the shell back to rotate. Just do some nice even segments. And try not to trap any of the straggle string fibers on the bottom, on top of your shell back. I'm just ribbing this up. I'm trying to keep the segments as even as possible. Just wrap right through the thorax area. All the way to the eye, and then tie off. A few turns behind, a couple in front. Because this is mono, you have to make sure you get I double it back and then over the top of it a couple turns, and then I whip finish it off. And I'll do 2 whip finishes. And then remove the thread and the rib. Okay, now what I do is kind of come through with my bodkin, and any of the fibers in the thorax area that I may have trapped down, I want to pick those out, because I want there to be the straggle string fibers, I want those to come out for the legs and the thorax area. Now, because these hydrocyc, or the free-living net spinner caddis, they do have some gills, but they're really small. So I'm going to come through with my scissors and just kind of trim in the abdomen area. I'm going to trim those fibers down. Okay, now what I like to do is add some color, and for color I'm going to be using these chart pack markers, and the color I have here is an olive, and then I have a pale olive. I'm going to start with the pale olive, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to color over the entire back. On all sides of the back with the pale olive first. And then I'm going to come over the top of that with the darker olive, or just a straight olive. The color number is 139. And then I'm going to come over just the thorax area with this the darker color. And then to darken it up even more, I'm going to use a Delta Brown. And again, just on the thorax area. And then I'm going to come underneath and hit the thorax area a little bit with the Delta Brown. And that just darkens up those straggle string fibers to make them look more like legs. But careful not to go over your hot spot though, just touch the underside with the Delta Brown. You could use black too if you wanted, but and then to cover up that head area, I'm going to be using a UV clear fly finish, and I'm just going to put a little bit, and then to cure it I have a UV laser. So I'm just going to put a little bit just on the top to kind of seal those that darker color in. And I'm only putting this on the thorax area. I'll put a little bit of coat, another coat up over the top of this. Kind of spreading it around because I want to cover that entire shell back area. All right, that's it.